Praise the Lord and welcome. Have you ever been staring at a huge, life-changing promise, but all you can actually see is the giant, impossible gap between where you are and where that promise is? Well, today we're diving deep into an ancient story that is all about that exact feeling. It's a foundational story about a man named Abram, a promise that was literally written in the stars, and a very, very strange ceremony that I think reveals a journey that we all take with doubt and faith.
And it all kicks off with this raw, almost painful question. This is Abram speaking directly to God. You can just feel the ache in that question, can't you? This isn't some polite theological discussion. It's a cry from the gut, from a man who feels like his time is running out and his biggest dreams are just turning to dust. This is the heart of the problem.
So let's start right there with him. Let's step inside Abram's tent, where he's surrounded by all his success. But he's just haunted by this one single, overwhelming fear. The fear of leaving nothing and no one behind. See, for Abram, this wasn't just about wanting a kid. In his world, an heir was absolutely everything. It was the continuation of your name, your legacy, your entire life's work. Think of it like a family business, but on a cosmic scale. And God had promised him a great nation. But right now, the person in line to get everything was a trusted servant. A good guy for sure, but not the son of the promise. So from where Abram was sitting, that big promise felt pretty hollow. But just as Abram is locked into this downward spiral of despair, God responds. And his response isn't to argue or to give him a lecture. No, it's a complete change of scenery that leads to one of the most incredible promises ever made. I want you to really notice the action here. God physically moves Abram. He takes him from the inside to the outside. Think about what that means. Inside the tent, it's dark, it's confined. All Abram can see are his own four walls, his own limitations. But outside, well, outside is a whole different story. And then God gives this simple but incredibly powerful command. Look up. He's telling him to completely shift his focus, to stop staring at the dirt floor of his tent, to stop fixating on the problem right in front of his face, and to lift his eyes to something infinitely bigger than himself. Can you just imagine that moment? You're standing in the middle of the desert at night, no city lights, no pollution, just a deep, silent darkness, with the sky absolutely blazing with more stars than you could ever possibly comprehend. And God gives him this impossible task. And that impossibility, that's the whole point. And then comes the punchline. From 0 kids to a family, a legacy, as uncountable as the stars in the night sky. I mean, the contrast is just staggering. This isn't some small, manageable promise. It's an impossibly huge one, designed to completely dwarf Abram's doubt. And right there, in that moment, something inside Abram shifts. Faced with this mind-bending promise, the text says he simply believed. He took God at his word. This is such a pivotal moment. It's a turning point built entirely on choosing faith, even when it makes no logical sense. But hold on. If you think that's the end of the story, he believed, happily ever after, you'd be mistaken. Because faith, as this story shows us so well, isn't a one-and-done decision. It's a journey. And almost immediately, another very human question pops right back up. He asks, how can I know? Now, this is different from his first complaint. He believed the promise about a son, but now he needs some assurance about the other part of the deal, the land. And this shows us something so important. Faith isn't the absence of questions. Sometimes faith is having the courage to say, I believe you, but can you just give me something to hold on to? And God's answer to Abram's need for assurance is one of the most intense, symbolic, and frankly, weird rituals in the entire ancient world. He doesn't give a speech, he makes a covenant. Okay, so to really get what happens next, we have to understand what a covenant was back then. This wasn't a modern business contract you sign with a pen. No, this was a literal walk-the-line ceremony. The implication was deadly serious. If I fail to keep my end of this bargain, let me be torn apart just like these animals. It was the ultimate, unbreakable guarantee. So, Abram gets to work. He follows God's instructions, preparing this very strange and very bloody pathway. He gets the animals, he splits them right down the middle, and he creates this gruesome path between the pieces. He's literally setting the stage for the most binding oath imaginable. And as Abram waits, things start to get eerie. Birds of prey, symbols of death and destruction, they start trying to swoop in and ruin the whole setup, but Abram is actively fighting them off, guarding this sacred space. Then, as the sun goes down, it's not just regular darkness. The Bible calls it a thick and dreadful darkness.
You can feel this supernatural weight just pressing down. Something big is about to happen. And then we get the climax. While Abram is in a deep, God-given sleep, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch, these ancient symbols of God's holy presence, they appear. And they alone pass through the pieces of the animals. Now, this is the most important part. Abram doesn't walk that path. Only God does. He is taking the entire oath, the entire risk, the entire curse for failure completely upon himself. He's saying, if I break this promise to you, Abram, may I be the one who is torn apart.
This was God's answer to Abram's question, how can I know? He didn't just give his word. He signed it in fire. He backed his promise with his own life. The deal was sealed, totally, unilaterally, and unconditionally.
So, what in the world does this ancient story about stars and a fiery, bloody ceremony have to do with us today? Well, Abram's journey actually gives us this incredibly powerful three-step framework for how to navigate our own impossible-seeming situations.
First, it's okay to voice your doubts. Being honest with God and asking how isn't a sign of weak faith. It's an honest search for real assurance. Second, find your stars. When you feel like you're stuck inside your tent, staring at your problems, you have to make a conscious choice to step outside, look up, and refocus on the sheer scale of the promise you're holding on to. And finally, number 3, recognize the commitment. Look for the tangible proof, the covenant of fire that backs the promises in your own life. It's the ultimate reassurance that you are not in this alone.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. Abram was literally taken out of his tent and into the night sky to have his entire perspective changed. So the question for all of us is this. When life feels confined, when a promise feels impossible, where do you look to be reminded of what's truly possible? What and where are your stars? If this has been helpful for you, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can find it. Thanks for watching.